Hello, School Transportation Nation. It's Tony Corpin here with Mr. Ryan Gray, talking all things school transportation. Ryan, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tony. And Nation, as always, it's great to be with you.
Nice. We got some great headlines coming up for you guys this week. There's a lot of action in school transportation. We got the upcoming NAPT conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We've got the upcoming TSD conference, Transporting Students with Disabilities and Special Needs, November 6th through the 11th down in Frisco, Texas. You can still sign up. There's still space. So we'd love to have you down there. And we've got lots of speakers and keynotes and previous episodes, as well as some great content online, some new sessions. Specifically, Ryan, we'll hit on some of those as well as we get closer and closer to the conference. Ryan, you getting excited?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, what are we, like 2 weeks away, give or take, 2.5 maybe. So a lot of great learning on tap, networking, of course, hands-on training. Really looking forward to seeing everybody as well. It's always revitalizing and energizing to get on site and mingle with all the attendees and talk shop.
Wonderful. And also in a little bit, Ryan will be talking with Gregg Fox, Transportation Director for Franklin Square Union Free School District in New York, a 2025 Top Transportation Teams Award winner, also sponsored by TransFinder. So we thank them for that at STN Expo West. So that's where the awards were given. The panel was done. We got to hear all the tutelage from everybody on what it takes to be a top transportation team. So, and also it's available, Top Transportation Teams is open. So you go to toptransportationteams.com. You can lock in and make sure you get your chance to be recognized, you and your team, to be a top transportation team. So highly recommend you take advantage of that. Before we dive into the headlines, I want to remind you this podcast is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software, the school bus safety company, the leader in school bus driver training, and by Ride, real innovation delivered with excellence. All right, so School Bus Safety Week is on our talking points. We also have a PSA with NASCAR driver Ryan Preece. I don't know if you guys seen a sneak preview of that. We'll have it for you soon. We've got something going on with school bus Wi-Fi. Ryan sent me a company is coming to our rescue, so we'll learn more about that. We got a Howard County school bus driver union in Maryland sending flyers home with students. What's going on with that? That is interesting. As well as the application window to take advantage of the $10 million safety grant for school bus safety belts and safety equipment in Ohio, which was part of a bigger program, a big research study that was done after an accident. And the Department of Justice is looking at Stop for School Bus Violence program. So a lot to get into, Ryan. I'm excited to see what you have to say. But before you do, got a quick message. Hey guys, have you heard the news? The School Bus Safety Company has unveiled a new leadership training course to elevate safety leadership. This innovative course is a compelling opportunity for school transportation professionals to enhance safety standards and now is open for enrollment, inviting leaders to transform their operations. It's tailored for location managers, supervisors, trainers, dispatchers, anyone in a supervisory or leadership role. The course offers a robust curriculum featuring 7 comprehensive programs and a 40-question final exam. The program includes Introduction to Safety Leadership, what is safety, safety management systems, why do people have accidents, understanding human behavior, leadership principles, safety leadership practices. Guys, I've gone through this course and it is outstanding. I highly recommend you check it out. Give the School Bus Safety Company a call at 866-275-7272 or visit their website at schoolbussafetyco.com. That's schoolbussafetyco.com.
All right, Tony. Yes. School Bus Safety Week. I know all you school districts and school bus companies out there in the nation are likely hard at work celebrating that week. Lots of activities. As always, we'd love to hear stories from you. I know that on our social media, we regularly ping our audience to try to to learn more about any events that you guys are holding. Of course, always love photos, videos, and whatnot. So certainly, the third week in October is always a big one, Tony. Lots of folks that are really doubling down on that school bus safety message. And we did talk about this a little bit earlier in the month. The Michigan Association for Pupil Transportation, of course, has this PSA that it worked on with Roush CleanTech, Bluebird, and several other organizations, along with NASCAR. So that is out officially. It came out on Monday for School Bus Safety Week, so you can check that out. We have it over at stnonline.com and certainly on our socials. Pretty cool, a 30-second spot. As we described it a little bit a couple of weeks ago when we spoke with Katrina Morris, who's the executive director for the Michigan Association for Pupil Transportation, she really spearheaded it. So again, hats off to her. This was a labor of love for her. She's something she'd been wanting to do for a while. Pretty cool to get a NASCAR driver. And that's going to be basically running through the end of the year.
Very cool, right? Super cool.
Definitely.
Some star power, right?
Definitely. And so if you're a NASCAR fan, be on the lookout for that. And again, you can find that over on our website. But pretty cool. Again, anytime that the school bus gets that national focus is always usually a good thing. And it's funny, as we're here at School Bus Safety Week, and there's been a lot of chatter about this new Apple TV movie, The Lost Bus, starring Matthew McConaughey. I know, a very well-liked actor.
He's the driver, right? He's the driver of the bus. There's like flames from the sky,
He's the school bus driver.
It was a Thomas bus too, which was pretty cool to see.
Which is, it's interesting because, as the nation is wont to do on social media or elsewhere, they really dissect these things, and they mention, hey, it's a Thomas built bus that it wasn't even spec'd for California. But it's the whether it is or isn't, producers Hollywood, they take license to tell the story. And it was interesting. I was in touch with the superintendent for Paradise Unified School District. So that's what the story is about. And of course, they had this horrific deadly fire back in 2018. And it's still to this day the deadliest fire in California history. The fires that we had earlier this year down in Pacific Palisades and Altadena, they were horrific as well, but they did not reach the scope of Paradise. A journalist wrote a book about that experience, not simply on the Lost Bus, although that is a chapter in the book, but Matthew McConaughey plays school bus driver Kevin McKay, who's now a teacher for nearby Chico Unified. I reached out to Kevin. I tried to get a hold of him. As we were recording this, I still hadn't heard from him. But the BBC actually did a story with him, an interview with him, as well as teacher Mary Ludwig, who is depicted in the movie by actress America Ferrera. So really interesting. Again, you can jump over to our social media and see a lot of the dialogue that different folks in the nation have about that. And he didn't pre-trip the school bus. Well, you see him start to do the walk around again. Hollywood takes its license and they're not going to show the intricate and all the details, certainly. But it was funny, Tony. I was reading a lot of the comments, and some of the people were mentioning, after about 15 minutes of them pointing out issues, their spouse would say, "Can we just watch the movie, please?" So I'm sure, if you have a spouse or a significant other, I'm sure that you get some eye rolls after a while because you're so in depth with pointing out things. Because hey, this is your livelihood, this is your career, this is your passion. So, but for School Bus Safety Week, good timing. It's a great story of resilience, of heroism, what Kevin McKay did to evacuate an elementary school, basically, and get these kiddos back to their families who were at the reunification center when, again, this horrific fire was spreading all across Paradise. That's, again, in Northern California. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely head over to Apple TV if you have a subscription. And if you don't have a subscription, I don't know, Tony, maybe something will happen shortly for folks to be able to watch that.
You never know, Ryan. You never know. We're always on top of it. Yeah, I mean, I broke down the movie myself, right? You definitely look at it and you scratch your head on the processes. I mean, the director of transportation sure did not treat that driver with a lot of respect. And it really kind of painted school bus drivers in this kind of dead-end job. Like the guy had no other chances. This was his last opportunity. He was trying to pick up extra things. They were talking about him, doing an illegal U-turn in the middle of a road. He's filling up his gas tank at just like the public gas station, which is highly unusual. Maybe in Paradise that takes place, but it felt like a very unusual thing. The radio system's not working. The bus had no other technology on it. It simply had a first aid kit, a fire extinguisher, which definitely was not the size of a normal fire extinguisher. It looked like
manual doors. I mean, you don't see that very often.
Yeah, there were definitely some inconsistencies there. But man, that Thomas bus was built like a tank. It went through the fire. It kept the kids cool with the air conditioning. I mean, it was a beast. So I'm excited to see the industry's reaction on social media more from this, but it is nice to get some recognition from some star power. A lot of fun to watch it with me and my wife, but definitely enjoyed. So yeah, guys, recommend you go check it out. The Lost Bus on Apple TV. Fun to watch. Not sure it really helps us from a transportation perspective, but I guess it brings up that the drivers do care. They care about the kids. They cared about the kids' safety. The parents were clearly worried. It was about getting the kids out of the school safe. Kind of like a tale of evacuation during a wildfire. We've seen it obviously with hurricanes and other extreme weather events. Wildfire is kind of more specific to California. We see that more and more. We haven't seen much of that in other parts of the country, but definitely a tale there to be told, I guess, from Paradise with the largest wildfire in California history. That's the way they depicted it is pretty nuts.
Yeah. Well, and wildfires really, I mean, they're all over the place. I mean, Canada had a huge one last year. We see it all across especially the western part of the US, but elsewhere. So just like with the hurricanes that we talk about, and tornadoes and ice storms, and student transporters need to be prepared and ready to rock at a moment's notice. And really, ultimately, there was some dramatization to this film, but I think it's important to point out that Kevin McKay. You say he was in a dead end job. That's how the movie portrayed it. He obviously had, according to the story, and I'm reading the book right now, he had, some personal issues, don't we all? But he went and got his teaching credential after this, and he's teaching in high school in nearby Chico. So certainly this experience, helped him with his career, and he's making a difference still, teaching the kids up there in Northern California. So hats off to him. One thing that was interesting to me when I was watching it, and not to give away everything, but when the school bus returns, okay, he's successful. He gets the kids back. I think you could kind of foretell that even if you haven't seen the film. But when they get back, he's very I don't want to use the word nonchalant, but he just gets off the bus and kind of blends into the background. And I believe that America Ferrera's character, Mary Ludwig, played by America Ferrera, she takes a moment to try to call him out. But really because the parents know the teacher, they glom onto her and say, "Oh, thank you so much." And Kevin McKay, played by Matthew McConaughey, just kind of slinks off into the background. And I think that's something that resonated with me, because as we know, school bus drivers are largely underappreciated, at least, amongst a lot of folks, kind of a second thought in terms of education, but play such a vital role. And it's interesting, with School Bus Safety Week designed to amplify that message. And of course, coming up in February, we're going to have Love the Bus Month that NAPT runs. And the headlines, though, recently, where there was a school bus driver who used social media to show a quick video of her high-fiving the kids, and she actually got was actually asked to resign because of this, and it was since reinstated because there was so much backlash on the school district. And it's one of those things where the parents really rallied to this driver's defense. And we do see that. I think that the school bus drivers, and there's so many of you out there that are making that positive difference, and the parents see that they're willing to step up and help you out. We saw that a couple years ago with the driver in Ohio who had that expletive laced tirade that was caught on video, who finally snapped with the kids, or with a certain number of kids that were really causing problems. And she admitted, hey, yes, I absolutely was out of line, and she resigned proactively for it. But the response and the GoFundMe, I think she made over $100,000. I can't remember what it was at this point, but it goes to show you that school bus drivers do make a difference. They are noticed, and especially when they're doing the right thing, which is 99% of the time, it's being appreciated by the parents, by the students. So, hats off to everyone out there as you guys celebrate School Bus Safety Week. And again, let us know. Email us. Let it go on social media. Tell us what you're doing. Show us how you're helping to celebrate school bus safety and celebrate your drivers and your staff too.
Yeah. Ditto, Ryan. Appreciate the drivers out there. Safety, top of mind for everybody. It's kind of a cornerstone of school transportation. So also technology is a cornerstone of transportation. And we got something going on. The Wi-Fi E-rate has a heartbeat again. But it's going private, or a foundation's helping. What's going on? Give us some background.
Yeah, a nonprofit called Mission Telecom is basically offering for the fiscal year 2025 projects that were greenlit. A lot of school districts were just left holding the bag. They were getting their applications approved, and then suddenly, of course, earlier in the month, the FCC pulled the plug. And we've written about that. We talked about that to great extent. Head over to stonline.com to read more about that, of course. But this company, a nonprofit, Mission Telecom, announced that they are going to provide affordable Wi-Fi access to schools, libraries. This is going to cover school bus Wi-Fi. It's going to cover the hot spots that students can take home with them that FCC also cut. And then earlier this year, there was that CRA in the Senate Congressional Review Act that sought to remove that. That was approved. As of this reporting, we're still waiting to hear what the House does with that. If the House passes it, then it can be passed by the full Congress and then go to President Trump for signature. We don't have that yet, but certainly FCC did what they could do to reverse that Learning Without Limits initiative, specifically looking at hotspots and school bus Wi-Fi. Well, still got to get a lot more details on this. I think one of my questions to Mark Caldwell, who's the director of broadband ops at Mission Telecom, and we haven't connected yet while we're recording this. But one of my questions to him will be, what about going forward? Because so many school districts, as well as libraries and everybody else, if you don't already have Wi-Fi, and okay, it's great that you can get it for fiscal year 2025, but what about 2026, 2027? It's not one of those things that you're just going to buy for the year and then what happens next? Yes, you can get it installed, but what about some of the other usage rates and data and whatnot? So definitely want to unpack a little bit more with this, but good news that this nonprofit has stepped up and said, hey, this is an important, 20,000 schools and libraries we're talking about that are counting on more than $27.5 million. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of cheese, Tony, to leave on the plate. So we'll have some more detail shortly on how this is all gonna work.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Props to them for stepping up to helping out school bus Wi-Fi. We'll be greatly appreciative of that as people take advantage of it. Obviously, some different hoops you got to jump through to get the funds, but definitely worth the effort to help out your students get that access. So also let's talk a little more, Ryan, about what's going on with the safety technology grant that's going on out in Ohio. I know there was a working group. They had come out with some recommendations, but now they've actually put their money where their mouth is, and they're funding it in the state of Ohio. So what's the story on that?
Yeah, so you'll remember that Ohio school bus working group called by Governor Mike DeWine several years ago after that student ejection and fatality when basically a work truck crossed the center line and the school bus tried to evade it and it turned over, and the child was killed. So I think it made 17 recommendations. And one of them was for a funding program for seatbelts. So the school bus safety grant program application, it's launched, and they were being accepted October 15th, so just started last week and running through November 14th. So not a lot of time there to try to get your share of the $10 million competitive pie there in terms of safety grants in Ohio.
It's not just seatbelts, though, right? It's a bunch of different equipment that was recommended.
Yeah, there was a lot of different recommendations. I mean, it's talking about encouraging drivers to participate in professional development opportunities.
Sure.
Looking at things that the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce can do, working with public safety to create wellness programs for school bus drivers. Really, the school bus working group looked at a lot of different things. Seatbelts got a lot of the headlines, and certainly a lot of folks were looking for this working group to make a recommendation for seatbelts. They did not do that, though. They said, but we will recommend that there can be a grant program. There's only a couple school districts in Ohio that have seatbelts on their school buses, 3-point lap shoulder seatbelts, I should say. There was some mixing of metaphors, if you will, in the reporting and even in some of the data collection of this working group, where it was talking about, all school districts or most school districts already have seatbelts on their school buses. No, that's not true. There, CSRS, child safety restraint systems, that's different. When you have integrated child safety seats for the preschoolers, that's different than when we're talking about the actual lap shoulder belt seatbelts for students who are older. You can check out more on stonline.com as well. We have this article. It links back to the article on the recommendations. Again, there were 17 of them. And again, talking about what the Highway Patrol should do and holding regular meetings to identify critical incident responses and for crashes. So really an overarching report. But the big news last week, again, is that $10 million grant program, those applications are now being accepted. So you can learn more again at stonline.com.
Yeah, Ryan, I know some other headlines we were waiting on some updates on was specifically the DOJ program, which is around safety, right? Specific to school bus safety for kids, especially around school violence. So we'll get more on that, as well as what's really going to go on with the Department of Education. I know that there's a big rift there. What's happening in terms of staffing and funding and services? It seems like it's mud. It's mud right now, very swampy.
Oh, exactly. And, I heard that the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services, which basically oversees IDEA, there's 3 staffers left. 3? 3 at OSERS.
How can they get it done with 3 people?
That's the scuttlebutt. If you Google it, there's articles by every media organization known to man right now talking about various programs, because IDEA is just one program, and this is a congressional law, right? So there is IDEA funding as well as funding for lots of other different programs that needs to go out to states. And the issue is, well, if there's no staff to actually work those funding mechanisms. How is the money going to get out to school districts?
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading one article, and it likened it to having a football, a coach, and assistant coaches, but no players. So how are you going to get this done, and what's going to be that trickle effect? So, of course, we know that reduction in force that President Trump signed, it's 60 days. So that's looking out toward December 9th would be the earliest that folks can get back. Now, if the government shut down and sooner than that, what's that mean? Just a lot of unknowns. But I know that, with in terms of funding for IDEA specifically now, IDEA does not go directly to transportation departments. We know that it goes to states, and there's discretionary funds, non-discretionary funds. Everything is basically being affected right now. So certainly when you're looking at trying to fund transportation expenses because it's a related service, this is where it's going to get thorny. Definitely we're waiting to see what happens. Have reached out to the Department of Education. I think it's pretty low on their priority list right now. It shouldn't be, but I know that they're dealing with a lot of media all across the nation. But certainly that has been a very big concern in education circles.
Yeah, one other headline we ran across last week was a school bus driver union was handing out flyers directly to students, and their families, pushing for higher pay for drivers. Now, I'm all for higher pay, but going to the students feels a little weird to me. I mean, I haven't ever heard of that before.
No, and this happened in Howard County, Maryland. So the school administrators, the superintendent came out and said, "Hey, we're supporting the school bus drivers. There's an issue right now. Part of the transportation is provided by Zoom, and this is a labor issue with Zoom, between Zoom and its drivers there in Howard County. Zoom, of course, just came on board with them last year, and but." The union, yes, had their school bus drivers handing out flyers to kids to take home last week, to take to their parents to ostensibly get more support and put some pressure on Zoom. And the superintendent was like, "Hold on, this is out of bounds here. This is not right. We should not be doing this and bringing the kids into it." And while, again, supporting the drivers, pointing out that, Zoom is coming up on renegotiating the contract. So that's when these things are going to be handled. So I just, again, let's not include the students in these labor issues. I think students and children are subjected to enough nowadays. But certainly I reached out to Zoom to try to get a comment on that. I haven't heard back at this point. But certainly we read that and we're like, oh, that's kind of below the belt.
All right, Ryan. That was a great conversation. Enjoyed those top headlines. We got a quick message and we're headed to your interview.
The Ride family of vehicles include the award-winning Achiever, Creator, and Dreamer battery electric school buses. The Creator is powered by STN's 2025 Best Green Technology Award winner, the Blade battery. With safety as a central focus, Ride school buses provide immediate benefits to our communities and our children. Visit ride.co to discover the future of student transportation, or email info.na@ride.co for further product detail.
All right, Nation, we're back here with one of 6 top transportation teams that was awarded at STN Expo West in Reno, Nevada in July, of course, sponsored by TransFinder. Gregg Fox, Transportation Director for Union Free School District in New York State, the representative of the district who is on hand in Reno, sat on a panel. Gregg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
So as I mentioned, you were the representative of the school district. The entire transportation team won this award. You, though, as the fearless leader, was, as I mentioned, tapped to be on a panel along with 5 of your peers from across the nation to talk about how to become a top transportation team in the industry. Lots there to unpack and talk about. First, want to, as I always do or try to do with our guests on the podcast, find out a little bit more about you. Why don't you tell the nation about your journeys, how you got into transportation to begin with?
So I kind of got into transportation by accident. I started out. I went to school for journalism, majored in English. I worked at a major network in New York City for about 8 years. I saw that there was a kind of a shift happening in the industry as a whole. um, I really kind of didn't want to be involved with it anymore. It was kind of getting away from what journalism traditionally was, and becoming a little bit more political, a little bit more opinionated. So I left that when I was still in my, I guess, late 20s, and went and started up a company with a friend of mine. We imported goods and materials from all over the world into the United States. And after like 5 or 6 years, we received a an offer to purchase our company by a much larger competitor. So I went ahead, sold my shares of that company, and I was kind of like in my mid 30s and at like kind of a crossroads in life where I was like, well, what do I want to do with myself now? Because I'm pretty bored. So I already had a CDL for many years that I held on to. I had it for no real reason. But anyway, long story short, there was an opening for a school bus driver here in Franklin Square where I live, and I applied and got a phone call from the director at the time, and she said, "Come on down." And so I came down over the summer, and I was hired on the spot to become a school bus driver, which I was kind of just planning on doing temporarily, just to kind of like fill some time while I was deciding what I was going to make my next step in life. But like anything else, I got involved, and I ended up becoming like a yard director, I guess, in a way, like kind of overseeing the maintenance of the buses and whatnot. And I also like started to realize that like the people I was working with, became friends of mine. So, like I was like, you know what? I'll hang it out for a little while longer and see where it goes. And I've been here now for, this is my 8th year. I've been director for, this is now my third. So, but yeah, that's how I started out. It was pretty fluky. I mean, it wasn't, didn't have any background in transportation. I didn't have any experience with it. It wasn't intended, but that's sometimes that's how the best things in life happen, when you least expect them. So
That is true. And it's interesting. You got out of the import business before the tariffs fully hit you with the stuff happening now.
yeah, I got out of that for sure. Yeah.
Well, being able to sell your business or sell your shares, that congratulations on that. I mean, anytime you're running your own business and you're recognized for it through an acquisition, and you get some recouping there of your blood, sweat, and tears, and then some, is always nice. So
for sure. Yeah.
But that obviously gave you some resources to get into transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And curious, so you said you've been there 8 years. So talk a little bit more about how you moved up the quote unquote career ladder there. So how long did you drive, and how did you transition into management?
So the first 6 months or so, I was just driving. So it was, I was like a 6 hour driver, 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. Then around January or February of my first year was when I was offered this like yard manager's position. So that was pretty much when I became like a full-time employee. So I was 8 hours, 12 months a year. And I guess like through that role, I was able to kind of spread my wings a little and help the director at the time kind of implement new technologies and, kind of like bring the department semi out of the Stone Age, start to computerize some more stuff and look at things from, a more kind of like a more modern perspective. That's what like we started to look into, kind of making more things digital, more things online, more things electronic. And what happened was is she unfortunately she passed away during COVID. So we had an opening in 2020 after she passed away. And there was an assistant director at the time who became the director. And she was here for 2 years. And then she had a couple of things that happened. She ended up retiring, leaving, moving to another state. So then when the position opened up, I applied, and that's how I got to become the director.
Wow. So much of this award, again, it recognizes the team and the culture. So
Mhm.
take us through a little bit. You've been there 8 years, and you went through a couple of leaders there, and unfortunately,
Right.
like you said, the transportation director who hired you died from COVID, and certainly that just kind of flipped upside down everyone's world.
Right.
And certainly from a personal standpoint, but also professionally, it's just changed how we work.
Yeah.
So tell the nation a little bit about the culture, how it was obviously going through COVID, going through the death of the transportation director, going through another leadership change, how that affected everything. And what was it like when you stepped into that transportation director role? What did you see as things that needed to be changed, or what were things that your staff were telling you that they wanted?
So when I first started here 8 years ago, there was definitely, like I would say, two distinct teams. Not everyone was kind of, yes, everyone worked for the same school district, but I wouldn't say that everyone was necessarily playing on the same team. And by that, I mean there was a division in the yard, not necessarily created by any one person or event, but you could definitely see where there were people who felt like they were part of something and people who felt like they weren't. That lasted through the death of the supervisor or director that hired me. And if anything, it got worse when the assistant took over. And again, I wouldn't blame it on anyone. I would just say that it was that I think the problem was that when the prior people had risen to a place of authority in the yard, they kind of forgot where they came from, kind of thing. And they started to look down upon people, instead of like leading with positivity. They kind of were very quick to point out people's shortfalls or shortcomings, never necessarily focus on the positive, but only the negative. And I think that's kind of the environment that I took over. And a lot of people wanted me to get the job because they kind of knew the kind of person I was. They just knew that, like, I always try to look on I'm like a glass half full kind of guy as opposed to a, half empty. So I always try to see the positive light of something, even if it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Only because I just feel like if you try to put a positive spin on something, it'll end up being, better in general to try and lead a group of people who you're trying to encourage as opposed to discourage,
Absolutely. And I think we have that conversation a lot where, you started as a bus driver. I know, Pamela Greenfield, who was the
hmm
transportation director who passed away. She started as a bus driver and was a dispatcher before she became the director for like 15 years or so. And it's
Right.
always that
hmm
that juggle. You're friends with these people. They're
Right.
your compatriots, your peers,
hmm
and suddenly you're elevated into that role and you become the boss. And
Right.
then it's like, oh, so a lot there to juggle. In terms of the culture, tell us a little bit about the driver shortage. I mean, we hear so much about that, and really, I've mentioned this in my coming column in the October issue, is that it's not simply a driver shortage, it's a driver retention
Right.
issue,
Yeah.
a staff retention. It's not simply drivers.
hmm
Where do you guys stand with your shortage, whether that be drivers, technicians, office staff? What do you need to be fully staffed?
So right now, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty fortunate in the fact that I'm only short one driver and one attendant. Um, considering the fact that a lot of districts in this general vicinity, have shortages that are worse than mine, and also uh, many contractors in this area are going around, and like another director from another district. I actually just spoke with her this morning, and she called me up in a panic and basically said like one of the contractors that she uses for a school that we both do, let her know that as of next week they're not going to be able to do like the afternoon run anymore. So that leaves 70 something kids behind at the school, and she, was wondering if I could help her out. And, in any normal case, if I have the availability, I'll try to, encourage our drivers to, help out our neighboring districts in the times of need. But unfortunately, it happens to be at a time where I just can't do it because, like, we don't run with a lot of excess. I feel like many districts don't. And I don't even think that you really can anymore because you just generally don't ever have more people than you need. But I don't have like extra people sitting around that I could be like, oh, these 3 days let's go help them out. I mean, it literally every one of my drivers, with the exception of a spare, is on the road, morning and afternoon. I drive every day, morning and afternoon. Again, that was part of my whole, like, being one of the team kind of thing, like, just because I, became the, transportation director doesn't mean that I'm not a driver first and foremost, so, I don't want the people that we service, the kids we service, or the members of my staff to think that I'm not in the battlefield with them. So that's one thing. The other thing obviously is with retention. I think like obviously the cost of living in general has gone up significantly around the country, right? So traditionally school bus drivers weren't always paid that much. But if you still need people to do this job, obviously with the cost of everything going up, so does the living wage, So that's kind of another thing that I think districts are starting to realize, that like they're having to include more money in budgets for transportation because like It's not necessarily like a job where you have people that were stay-at-home moms doing anymore. First of all, the rules have changed where, like you don't get to bring your own kids as they're young on the bus anymore with you. And then the other thing is, like a lot of people that are doing this job now are doing it as a full-time job. It's not like extra play money, for the family.
Absolutely. So, and I think that, keeping that culture is the big test now. You've helped impact things. And for those in the nation who don't know, this award sponsored by TransFinder, not a prerequisite that the school districts use TransFinder. There's kind of across the board what folks are using, but it's survey driven. So they send out this survey, and transportation teams basically nominate themselves and say, hey, this is why we think we should win. This is where we've come from. This has been our journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's judged, and it's the best responses win, and they're scored.
All right, well, we're going to continue in just a second after a quick message. We're back from ST and Expo West, and what a blast the TransFinder team had meeting everybody. They held several classes, had an amazing response to their ride and drive, showcasing their award-winning driver app, Wayfinder. One of the highlights was the top transportation teams panel discussion. The leaders of the 6 winning teams demonstrated just why their teams won. These were thoughtful leaders who listened to their teams, made changes to show how they cared, and yes, even had to make difficult decisions. As TransFinder's CEO Antonio Civitella said, it is so rewarding to honor these men and women who truly do heroic work every day. You can see how much this recognition means to these teams, and that's what makes it all worth the effort. TransFinder started the Top Transportation Teams program in 2023, and it continues to get bigger and better every year. Learn more by visiting toptransportationteams.com to learn more about how your company can join the program. Also visit transfinder.com.
So, as I was saying, keeping that culture now is going to be the big test.
Yeah.
How does technology help with that? Because we hear from a lot of school districts that sometimes getting the latest and greatest school bus with all the bells and whistles, that's what drivers have been asking for. That's what, if you can show them the why, and this is how it makes your job, I don't want to say easier, but perhaps simplifies things or makes things less problematic in certain issues, whether it's dealing with student behavior or other motorists on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You guys happen to be a TransFinder customer. Tell us a little bit about your routing software, but then also tell us about how your other technology is playing into the ecosystem here, and maybe what else are you looking to include in your technology suite?
So with TransFinder, we migrated from their Pro software to their Plus, so that put everything that we were doing, online in the cloud. So now I can access all of our student information, routes, and whatnot from any computer that I log into, which certainly helps because, sometimes something will come to mind when I'm home or on the weekend or whatnot. I can log in and make changes or, notate something so that, it doesn't have to wait until I'm physically in the office using the computer that actually had the software installed. As far as helping drivers, when we moved to Plus, we started to print out all of the routes themselves. So, like for a long time, they were routed through TransFinder, but we actually did the directions or left and rights, like on Word or Excel or whatnot, because the Pro software, it had a lot of information on it that didn't necessarily it wasn't that it was wrong. It was just a lot of excess stuff that didn't necessarily need to be there. But with Plus, you're able to edit the reports yourself. So, we basically were able to kind of take the routes and fine tune what was being printed out and provide to the drivers, so that now it's very concise and streamlined. So that you can give the run to anyone, and basically, as long as they know the area that they're driving in, which our our town is not that big. It's like 2 square miles. They're able to get from point A to point B without getting lost. So that's helpful, because we don't if we update something in Transfinder, it updates the left and right. So we're no longer having to take multiple steps in order to make sure that the directions match the route. And then the other thing is we started to have TransFinder communicate with our student management software that the district uses. So essentially, it's like when a student gets added or deleted from there, it does the same thing in the other software. So, like for a long time, we were manually adding kids, into TransFinder, saying whether they were eligible, not eligible, could get on the bus, couldn't, where their bus was, et cetera. And now it all is kind of very much done behind the scenes, which is also another time saving thing. And that's something that our IT department worked with Transpire to do. As far as helping the drivers out with technology, I've gone to electronic driver reports. We've moved to electronic like student reports, as far as like if there's an incident or a behavior issue on the bus. Everything's now done either on the driver's phone or on an iPad. And it just makes the amount of paper that's being moved around much less. The other thing is what we did do was we moved to using Trip Finder in general. Now, Trip Finder is a part of TransFinder. It's like a module, and our staff now throughout the district uses Trip Finder to schedule their field trips. And it used to be like a multiple day process where it would start off with the teacher having to call transportation, finding if the day was available, then sending a request to the principal signing off, sending it back to the teacher sending a form. It came here, we put the information, sent back the form back. It was just, it was kind of actually ludicrous when I think about how this was going on for so long. So to move along to that, where now the entire process takes less than an hour, for a teacher to know whether or not they can go on a trip on a day at a time, and it's been a big hit. Everyone that uses it really likes it. So that's like part of TransFinder that everyone in the district interacts with, and that has been very successful as far as making, I think, everyone's job a lot easier, from school administration down.
Is there anything else technology-wise on your wish list that you're eyeing that you're like, oh boy, would love to either have the money or just the time to implement that?
Yeah, so I mean, ideally, one day I would love to be able to install like tablets in the buses so that we can have the routes just, instead of having to print them, just kind of either have the driver have their own tablet or have a tablet in a bus where, you can pull up the run that you're doing, and, have all the student information, who's getting on and off at what stops, contacts and whatnot, all that stuff. That's a wish list. I mean, like anything else, it has to be, planned for in the budget and whatnot. Make sure that, it's not something that, I can just kind of, add last minute, because it comes with a cost. And, the cost doesn't even necessarily include like the installation. It's just, the initial, purchase up front, getting everything set
The
up.
data, the monthly subscription
Right,
fees.
the data, right, exactly. Correct. Yeah. So, again, it's like, when you look to add anything, nothing's cheap anymore. So, you could add something small like a map and it's $3,000, but, again, it's kind of like prioritizing things, I mean, our administration, I have to say they've been very good to us, very cooperative. They definitely know the value of having our own district transportation team and district owned vehicles, because many of our neighboring districts do not, and they're at the mercy of contractors. And, again, you can try to explain a million ways to a parent as to why something's not happening. But, again, ultimately, you can only pass so much blame off to a contractor because it was the district that hired the contractor. So, you know what I mean? Like it makes it a lot easier to put out fires and deal with situations that arise when you're dealing with your own drivers and your own vehicles and whatnot, and not having to share a vehicle with a neighboring district, or have the contractor overextend themselves to a point where they can't service what they agreed to.
And speaking of the vehicles, I can't let you go without asking about electric school buses in New York State.
Okay.
Obviously is staring down the mandate. You guys, or I should say the school districts in the state, received a bit of a reprieve earlier this year with the state budget. You're basically getting an additional year to go ahead and start purchasing these buses to 2029 if you present that hardship to the state and it's approved.
Right.
Do you guys have any electric school buses? Number one. How big of a fleet do you have? So how many electric school buses would you need by 2035 when the fleets are supposed to be all electric or zero emissions?
Okay.
And are you ready for it?
My simple answer is no. It even dealing with a smaller district such as my own, where we only have 34 vehicles, obviously there's a huge expense that comes with replacing 34 vehicles with electric. I would say if the cost somehow came down to something where the one for one, it was going to cost the same roughly as replacing it with a diesel or a gasoline powered vehicle, it would be much more manageable. It would be an easier sell to districts, especially. But unfortunately, it's not. Even once you add in, state aid and whatnot, and any incentives that are being offered by, local programs or utilities or the government, there's still an additional cost to the electric vehicle, and I think unfortunately, it's still unproven technology as far as using it in like medium duty trucks. I think it's great for cars. I mean, my car that I drive to work every day is a hybrid, plug-in hybrid. So, I run electric from my here to my house and back and forth, and I probably buy gas once every 3 months. But again, from a truck standpoint, I think there's just a lot of unknowns, and that's what's kind of the holdup, especially for us, only because we like I said, we run lean here, so we don't have like this tremendous amount of money sitting around to be able to kind of test whether or not something's going to work, whether it's a good investment. If it's not, what do you do with it, kind of thing. I mean, obviously, like, well, we do know that electric vehicles in general have a terrible secondhand market value. So it's like if you're spending $415,000 on an electric school bus, and you, let's say, figure out that it doesn't really work for what you need it to, what are you actually going to get on the secondhand market for it? And like, it could be a year old and you might get less than half. And then, how do you explain that to taxpayers? And the other thing is it's like, I kind of feel like, yes, the it could change depending on, if in fact like the government of New York changes, like so, right now we have Governor Hochul. Well, if someone else becomes the governor, who's to say that the law won't change based upon what, that person's thinking is, I mean, it's kind of like how things changed, from at a federal level. Yes, the EPA mandate is kind of like gone, but like the funding also kind of went away in that the third round of funding still is kind of in limbo. So it's like, yeah, we applied for all those EPA grants and whatnot, but for 2 years you got an answer in May or April if you were selected, and now here we are in September, end of September, and no one's heard about round three. So it's kind of like where, how do you move forward with having so many question marks?
Absolutely.
That's kind of where I'm at.
And infrastructure. You didn't even talk about infrastructure and getting that in place, and
Yeah, I mean that's another thing. Yeah,
talking to school districts, and I've talked to some in New York where they say you guys can't even get the power that you would need. And I know there's some solutions, but again, that's more technology that costs money.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge, right. I mean, forget about just the bus, right? I mean, yeah, to you'd have to upgrade like all sorts of substations and whatnot in the area in order to be able to, take the draw out of the, the grid in order to be able to support the vehicles. And, they have the whole, V2G thing that, there's, but again, like once you talk to the local utility, you realize that like they're so far behind in V2G technology that like, yeah, they can sell you the stuff that will eventually do it, but they won't support it for like the first who knows how long. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, you could kind of like plan ahead to like eventually be able to see some sort of savings from the utility standpoint. But then, like, on the other hand, it's like, well, how long is it going to take to actually recoup those, whatever you spent in the savings if, in fact, the utility is telling you, well, we're really not sure as to when we're going to be able to actually utilize that technology to give you money back for what we're taking. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I mean, New York in general is a tough place to have a mandate like this, only because everything comes with a cost. It is not a place where we have, especially Long Island, we don't have nuclear power, we don't have cheap power. Everything is still, very expensive. And, it's like the savings that we would see from using electric versus we use gasoline here mostly now. All of our newer buses are gasoline powered, but yeah, I mean, everything it comes with a cost. I mean, my electric bill at home went up by like 33% in the last year. So, I mean, and that's not even plugging in any sort of, level three charging system for, what would be a very high capacity battery. So again, like I just don't know that in general, it, we like as a small school district would benefit from it. Maybe some of the larger places would, like that run hundreds of vehicles. But for like small guys like us that don't have a huge student catchment area and also don't necessarily go that far every day, I just don't know, like, if the technology is there and proven yet for us to make that huge initial investment across the board. Vehicle infrastructure, training, any sort of upgrades that we need to make to our own, systems here in order to be able to run electric. And then the other thing is like, there's this is a very divided community as far as whether or not people even believe in, clean energy. So it's like, yeah, I mean, no one wants their kid going to school on an old dirty diesel bus. But that those technologies have improved significantly over the last 10 years as well. So it's kind of like, what I rode to school on versus what the kids are riding to school on now. They're two very different things. So it's It's a tough sell. It's a really tough sell. I mean, we looked at electric, and we actually had put in a purchase order for one bus. But I mean, again, when you look at what the actual cost is versus the return on investment, we ended up canceling it just because it wasn't worth it for now. And we're hoping that the mandate changes. I guess we're rolling the dice, but we'll see.
We will see. And you have short routes, which is good for electric.
Mhm.
But yeah, like you mentioned, there's a lot there that needs to be figured out. And the funding, I know New York State has a boatload of funding, but
They do.
we've crunched the numbers, and it's not enough for 50,000
No.
buses in the state when you only have a
Right.
couple hundred, I think, on the road now. So,
Yep.
well, Greg, I really appreciate it coming on and talking about Franklin Square, your journey, your team's journey, and of course, all your technology needs. Congratulations again to the entire team for the Top Transportation Award.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And again, the award was something that was won by the entire team. I did not win the award. I couldn't win the award without the support of my administrative team, all the way down to, my drivers and attendants. So, again, this was an award that was won by our district, and we are very appreciative of that recognition.
Well, congratulations again, and looking forward to see if you guys can win next year.
Yeah, we're going to try.
A special thanks to Greg and Ryan for coming on this episode. We appreciate you guys so much for sharing your knowledge, insights. Love hearing all the good stuff happening in school transportation. Guys, we also appreciate our sponsors, TransFinder, the School Bus Safety Company, and Ride. Visit stnonline.com for all the latest news and analysis on the school transportation industry. Don't forget to come out for the ultimate in special needs training at the TSD Conference, November 6th through 11. Go to tsdconference.com. You still have time to register. There are lots of hotels in the area if you need a room. So come out, take advantage of all the great sessions. Go to our agenda, click on it, see our speakers. You will not be disappointed, nation. If you come out, you transport special needs kids, this is the conference for you. You can go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify to find every episode of the School Transportation Nation podcast. We're 279 episodes in, so you got a lot to choose from. We'd love you to be a listener every week. If you just go on Apple or Spotify and you add us, it'll just pop up right there. And we love 5-star reviews. If you can drop us a review, we're really appreciative of that. Thank you, nation. We love you. We'll see you next week.